The U.S. National Archives has said that some of the documents handed over by Donald Trump to the committee probing last year's Capitol Hill riots had been ripped, torn apart, and had to be taped back. Officials reportedly taped together fragments of paper that were sometimes as small as confetti. How do you react to this?
Well, I think there's now, as far as small as confetti, I can't necessarily speak to that, but I do know, having been in the Oval Office a lot, that when President Trump would finish up with, say, a memo or something that was put in front of him, and he regarded it as something that he had already been through or processed, then he'd rip it in half and once and then throw it in the trash can. And maybe the aides went through and, for preservation's sake, decided to grab that and tape it back together. But I think that was more of a matter of habit, something that the president had done over his decades of business, as opposed to anything else. But I do find it a little bit humorous, of just the sight of government workers trying to tape a document back together, even if it's completely insignificant. I do find that a little bit humorous, but I don't think there was any intention to subvert any National Archives request. I think that was just his habit. When he's done reading something and he no longer wants to have it around, just rips it in half and throws it in the trash can.
Just for some clarity, what is the habit that we're talking about, and why do you find this humorous?
Well, just when the president, when I've seen him, when he's done reading through something that he views as a meaningless throwaway item, frequently he'll just rip it in half and throw it in the trash can. As far as he's cleared that from his plate, that he's reviewed it and it's done. Obviously, that would never happen with sensitive documents. Obviously, sensitive type documents, or if they're important documents, that they're handed to the proper people to file accordingly. So anything he would have done that with would have been just it could have been as meaningless as a newspaper article or something that someone printed out an article form and he just, I've read it, throw it in half. But nothing, just to be very clear, nothing that would have been sensitive, or nothing that would have been of any concern if somebody had seen it, of that type of a nature, would have been ripped in half. Those would have been handed back to the proper government workers to go and process. So it seems to me it's much ado about nothing.
So you're saying the U.S. National Archives statement is incorrect?
I'm saying that it might be a little bit out of context. And there could have been, for example, there could have been documents that may not have even been necessarily from the president. They're referring to something that would be as small as confetti. And I imagine that must have been something that a different government worker that had something unrelated to the president may have put in a shredding machine, or may have torn up. And so I can't speak necessarily to every single document that was passed along to the National Archives, but I do think you have to look at it in the proper context.
But what you're largely saying is that none of the sensitive documents, or none of the documents to do with the Capitol Hill insurrection, would have been torn apart.
Correct. At least nothing that I would have seen. Obviously, I was not with the president in the Oval Office all the time, but obviously if there was some sort of sensitive type document, then those would have been handled back to the appropriate government worker. But it could have just simply been an article, for example, that the president had read. And so, again, I think that keep in mind that anytime these type things happen in Washington, usually there's a partisan nature. Everybody ultimately in Washington has a partisan or ideological perspective. I, for example, used to work for President Trump, so I'm going to have a somewhat pro-Trump perspective. There are people who may necessarily did not agree with or view that they worked for President Trump, and they'd have a different perspective. So it's just important to keep that in mind as the broader picture.
WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.